It was a quiet, gray morning when a small boy was seen sitting beside a weathered grave, his tiny fingers clutching a faded photograph. His clothes were worn, his eyes red from crying, but what caught everyone's attention wasn't his tears. It was what he kept saying. Asterisk, my mama's not gone. She's still alive. Asterisk at first, people passing by just shook their heads sadly, thinking the child was too young to understand death. But his voice never wavered. Day after day he returned, whispering the same words, believing with all his heart that his mother was still out there. Most ignored him until one man stopped. A millionaire known for his cold business mind and distant lifestyle had come to visit a relative's grave when he noticed the boy. Something about the child's eyes stopped him in his tracks. They were filled with pain, yes, but also something more: conviction. Against his own nature, the man found himself drawn into the boy's story. Who was this child? Why did he believe so strongly that his mother was still alive? And what secret did that grave hold? The town had long accepted the woman's death, but the boy's words sparked a quiet curiosity. The millionaire, using his influence and resources, began to dig deeper. What he would find would not only change the boy's life, but his own. As layers of the past started to peel away, a web of hidden truths, long-buried secrets, and one mysterious disappearance began to unfold. But just when the truth seemed close, something happened that no one expected. Something that left everyone questioning what they thought they knew. Stay with us, because what was buried in that grave was far more than anyone ever imagined. The boy's name was Eli, just 7 years old, with a voice soft but steady. He spoke of things no one could explain. How his mother tucked him in just a week ago. How he heard her humming from the hallway at night. People tried to convince him it was all a dream, maybe his way of coping. But Eli didn't cry like a confused child. He pleaded like someone who knew the truth but couldn't prove it. The millionaire, Mr. Dalton, had never believed in fate or feelings. His life had been built on logic, on contracts, on numbers. But Eli stirred something in him, a feeling he hadn't known since he was a child himself. He started asking questions. First, he looked up the woman's death certificate. Her name was Sarah Hayes. Official cause: car accident. Quick funeral. No autopsy. Everything wrapped up too neatly. Too fast. He visited the cemetery records. The caretaker there, an old man with a sharp memory, mentioned something strange. She was buried in a closed casket, he said, almost whispering. Didn't seem right to me. No family looked inside. That one sentence echoed in Mr. Dalton's mind for days. He found out Sarah had worked as a nurse. Quiet life. No enemies. Single mother. But when Dalton checked the hospital records, her name wasn't there, not in employee files, not in medical logs. It was like she'd vanished even before the day she supposedly died. Eli began drawing pictures of a white room, of a tall man in a coat, of his mother with a scared look on her face. She told me to be brave, he whispered one night. She told me not to tell. Mr. Dalton was beginning to think this wasn't just a child's fantasy. This was something bigger, something someone wanted to keep buried. Mr. Dalton couldn't sleep. The more he looked into Sarah's life, the more questions he uncovered. Her bank account had been emptied 2 days before the accident. Her phone records stopped suddenly, and the daycare where Eli used to go. They said Sarah had pulled him out a week before her death, claiming she was leaving town. But there was no record of her ever leaving. No bus tickets, no flights, no rental cars. It was like she'd been trying to disappear, but failed. Meanwhile, Eli started having nightmares. He'd wake up crying, clutching the same drawing over and over. A picture of his mother behind a glass window, her hand pressed against it, eyes wide with fear. Mr. Dalton brought it to a child psychologist, thinking it might offer clues. The expert said something unsettling. This isn't just imagination. These images suggest the boy witnessed something traumatic, possibly real. Dalton reached out to Sarah's former neighbors. One woman, Mrs. Callahan, remembered a man visiting Sarah, often during the weeks before her disappearance. He drove a dark SUV, never spoke, just watched the house, she said, lowering her voice. Then one night, there was shouting. I heard Sarah scream, and the next morning, the house was empty. As the pieces slowly came together, a shadowy picture began to form. Someone had been watching Sarah. Someone with power, maybe even a connection to her past at the hospital. But why fake her death? And why leave Eli behind? Dalton started to wonder if this had anything to do with medical research, maybe even a cover-up. Sarah might have seen something she wasn't supposed to. And Eli, maybe he knew more than he realized. Every answer seemed to lead to more danger, and someone out there was working hard to keep the truth hidden. Dalton knew he was running out of time. The deeper he dug, the more resistance he faced. His emails were ignored, calls mysteriously dropped, and someone even broke into his office one night, but took nothing. It was a warning. He didn't care. He couldn't walk away now, not after everything Eli had shown him. The boy still whispered to his mother at the grave, still believed she was out there. And now Dalton was starting to believe it too. Then came the breakthrough. An old friend of Sarah's, a nurse named Angela, finally agreed to meet, on one condition: no phones, no names. She looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. Sarah found something, she whispered. Something about a patient. A trial that wasn't legal. She was going to report it. Angela handed Dalton a flash drive, her hands shaking. This has hospital footage. I don't know how long it'll work. They've already wiped the system. Dalton rushed back to his home office and loaded the files. What he saw made his heart stop. In grainy black and white footage, Sarah was arguing with a man in a white coat inside a locked hospital room. The timestamp was just days before her supposed death. Her voice wasn't clear, but her fear was. And in the background, someone else was in the bed, a patient no one seemed to know about. As Dalton pieced together the final timeline, everything pointed back to one place, the now abandoned wing of the hospital. That's where it began. That's where Sarah had been last seen. And maybe, just maybe, where she still was. He called Eli, voice steady but low. We're going there tonight, he said. But you have to be brave. The boy didn't hesitate. I'm ready, he whispered. She's waiting. The hospital loomed ahead like a ghost from another time. Its abandoned wing was silent, sealed off for years after a supposed renovation project that never happened. Dalton parked far from the building, not wanting to draw attention. Eli clutched his hand tightly, his small fingers ice cold. It's here, he said softly. I've seen it in my dreams. They slipped through a rusted side door Dalton had unlocked earlier with the help of a contact who owed him a favor. Inside, the air was thick with dust and silence. Every step echoed. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing peeling paint and cracked floors. Then suddenly, Eli tugged on Dalton's sleeve and pointed. That's the hallway. They followed the boy's lead until they reached a room with a heavy metal door. It had a keypad lock, but Dalton had already guessed the code from hospital logs. Sarah's employee ID. The door creaked open. Inside was a sterile white room, untouched by time. A medical bed sat in the center, and on the far wall, a mirror. But Eli didn't look afraid. He stepped closer, whispering, "This is where she was." Then the lights flickered. Dalton froze. Footsteps echoed down the hall, slow, deliberate. Someone else was here. He turned off the flashlight and pulled Eli behind a cabinet. A shadow passed the doorway. Then a voice, cold and calm. "You shouldn't have come back, Mr. Dalton." It was the doctor from the footage. Dalton's heart raced. He recognized the voice. Dr. Everett Lang, a top researcher who had vanished years ago after an internal investigation. His name had been wiped from most records. Dalton realized then Sarah hadn't just uncovered a secret. She had stumbled into a hidden operation. And now they were caught in the middle of it. Dalton held his breath, heart pounding, as Dr. Lang stepped into the room. The man looked older than in the footage, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "You should have left this alone," Lang said, his gaze shifting to Eli. "You don't know what she risked." Dalton stepped forward, shielding the boy. "Where is she?" he demanded. "What did you do to Sarah?" Lang didn't flinch. "She's alive. She refused to be part of the trial, so we had to contain her. She saw things that weren't meant to be seen." He reached into his coat slowly, and Dalton braced himself. But instead of a weapon, Lang pulled out a keycard. "You want the truth. Fine." He led them down a narrow corridor behind the White Room. At the end was another door, reinforced and guarded by layers of steel. The card unlocked it with a soft beep. Inside, in a small, monitored room, sat Sarah, pale, thinner but alive. The moment her eyes met Ayla's, she broke into tears. The boy ran into her arms, sobbing, whispering, "I knew you were here." Dalton looked at Lang, confusion and anger burning. "Why now? Why show us?" Lang's face changed. Regret flickered for a second. "They're shutting it down, covering everything. I stayed behind to make sure she got out, before they made her disappear for good." Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Lang turned sharply. "They're already here." Dalton grabbed Sarah and Eli. "We go now." They barely escaped through the same side door, sirens wailing in the distance. Lang stayed behind, his final words echoing. Asterisk tell the world, before they erase it all. Asterisk. But the twist came days later, when Sarah, finally safe, whispered to Dalton, "I wasn't the only one. There are others, and they're still inside." In the days that followed, Dalton went public with everything. The files, the footage, Sarah's testimony, it all made headlines. News outlets picked up the story quickly, calling it the secret hospital wing scandal. Social media exploded with support for Sarah and Eli, and a formal investigation into the hospital and Dr. Lang's research began. Though Lang had vanished by the time authorities arrived, the evidence he left behind was undeniable. Sarah slowly began to rebuild her life. She stayed in a safe location with Eli, away from cameras and attention. She gave only one interview, where she bravely explained that she had been held for over a year, forced into silence because of what she discovered: a highly illegal medical trial involving unconsenting patients. "I couldn't run," she said, "but I never gave up hope. My son didn't either." Dalton, once known only as a distant millionaire, became a quiet hero. He never spoke much about what drove him to help Eli, only that something in the boy's voice had reached a part of him he thought he'd lost. He started a foundation in Sarah's name to support whistleblowers and victims of medical abuse. It became a place where truth had a voice, no matter how small. But one mystery still lingered. Sarah's final words stayed with Dalton. Asterisk, there are others. Asterisk, despite multiple searches, no trace of the other patients was ever found. The wing was sealed off permanently. No records remained. Still, every now and then, Eli would draw a picture. A hallway, a locked door, a hand reaching out. And Dalton would look at it, quiet and still, wondering if the story was truly over, or just the beginning of something deeper. But one thing was certain. Eli's voice had changed everything, and the truth could no longer be buried.